everyone, this is Pam, and today we're joined with Lauren, and we're going to start off with, how do we know each other?
We are neighbors.
We are neighbors.
Yes, we live across the street from each other.
And our kids go to the same school, and we all have the same neighbor drama.
We do.
And never a dull moment.
Never,
right?
never. Always excitement.
So Lauren, tell us what you do. What's your online store and what's your craft and art form?
I am a knitter and a crocheter. My online store is called LaurLaurLoops. It's on Etsy. It's on all of your major social media platforms. So I knit and crochet.
Awesome. So Lauren, tell us where did this come from? Who taught you,
So I taught myself to knit when I was in grad school, mostly for sanity, because I was like, I cannot read one more textbook without putting my stress somewhere. And so that's when I started knitting. And then crocheting, I actually worked at a school for children with special needs.
Okay.
And one of my students taught me the very basics of crocheting. And then my mother-in-law taught me a little bit. And now I've gone far past what any of them have taught me and kind of taught myself the rest.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. So which do you prefer over the other, or is it more just what you feel like?
It's funny, somebody asked me this last night. So I'm a faster crocheter than I am a knitter. So if I want to do things fast, I prefer to crochet. But because I think I started with knitting, it's more the soothing, rhythmic of knitting, I feel is more comforting to me than crochet.
Right. Interesting. That's really cool. Because I do know people that, a lot of people do both, and they're for the quick win, I go for crochet.
Yeah.
And it's okay, well, that makes sense.
And I was talking to someone last night because my daughter's left-handed, and I can't. She always asks me to teach her, and I can't.
Yeah.
And somebody was saying that they think knitting for someone who's left-handed is easier because it's two. And I was like, I feel whatever you start with is easier, because going from 2 to 1, I was like, what do I do with my other hand?
Right.
And then, now I'm fine, but it takes a while.
Cool. Yeah. So Lauren, what inspires you to take on the next project? Where does that come from?
So I feel my general vibe in life is cozy. I need to always feel cozy. So I started initially was always making blankets, which I loved, but they take forever.
Right.
And so actually during the pandemic, I started making hats, and it was cozy and quick, and you could take it with you beyond just your house. And so really, I feel it's going to be cozy and comforting, that's kind of where I start from.
Nice. No, I definitely see the theme in your work that way. It totally makes sense. I get it now.
If it's not cozy, I'm not coming.
Another thing, what inspires you? Do you get a lot of inspiration from the yarns that you choose, or the patterns, or both? Where does that come from?
Both. I see patterns I really like, and then I will use all kinds of yarns, but my favorite are really hand-dyed merino wool, sort of one of a kind. So you can buy multiple of the color, but it's not always the same. It's always a little bit different. So I really like how everything is really one of a kind. And so sometimes I'm sort of oh, well, this yarn will just speak to me about what it wants to be. And sometimes I'm I love this pattern. What yarn do I feel works for it? So it just sort of depends. But I kind of let one or both things kind of speak to me and be yes, this is what I need to be.
I totally relate to that, because even with the furniture, sometimes I'll look at the fabric and know instantly what the pattern should be, or vice versa. I'll look at the piece of furniture and be oh, you need to be blue, or it just guides it in different ways and forms.
Because when I hear you tell the stories about the pieces, I'm oh yeah, that totally makes sense. That you saw this part of this or that part of that, and it melded together for you.
Right. Yeah. So Lauren, when you pick out things to sell on your Etsy site, do you consider saleability, color, oh, well, I sold 3 blue ones, I'm going to continue with blue, things like that.
Sure.
For market trends.
Yeah. So I just very recently, in the last month and a half, opened my Etsy. And prior to that, I was doing almost all custom orders. So really it was sort of well, let me work with you to feel what works best for you. So I do sort of both. I consider, if I think that no one's going to purchase X, Y, or Z, then I'm obviously not going to make that. But I'm also kind of I need to make what I feel good about making. The hard part is that getting stuff in the store in time, because like I make mostly winter stuff, so
Sure.
I'm not always like
It's very seasonal.
Yeah, I'm not always keen to be knitting in like 100-degree weather in the summer, so I have to like force myself to build up inventory for winter in the summer.
Gotcha. Yeah, that can be difficult with the furniture because it's a very unique statement piece oriented stuff, so it's not easily market trend driven with color and style all the time. But I mean, that's kind of what makes it so different too.
Right.
So it's an interesting kind of contrast.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate, because we do make so many quilts, I can totally understand being buried under something wool and heavy in the dead of August and just being like, I can't believe I'm working on this now, but it's for Christmas, and you know, I totally understand that.
I know you guys don't do much of this, but like the cool thing for me about customizing is that people come up with things that I was like, oh, I would never think to make this in that color, and then it looks really great and they love it. So that's like really cool about being able to customize it, because it's a smaller, obviously quilts take way longer than a hat to make, so.
Right. No, but that's cool that you can bring that to the market. That's really neat. I don't like to like highlight the negative, but like reasons why I'm not a knitter. Like I already know why I'm not a knitter, and you all just said that you find the sewing part tedious.
I did once try to quilt. I tried to make a quilt for Milo when I was pregnant, and I went to like a quilting whatever like store. And I was like, this is going to be great. And I literally sat there and was like, I don't know if I can process all of this. And like, I think I gave away the pieces to somebody and was like, here, do something with this.
So that's so funny, because I have tried knitting on a number of occasions, because there's a lot of crossover with knitting, quilting, crocheting. Like a lot of people do all of it. And so I set out on making a scarf. It was very simple, 2 purl, 2 knit. Like we're not, not reinventing the wheel here. And I realized very quickly that I'm bad at counting, and the scarf kept going like this, because I'd be like, oh, I'll just add another row, I'll just add another stitch, and then it was just like this morphed into this giant thing that was horrible. It was awful, and I had already spent so much time working on it that I was just like, I can never look at this project again. So that is the whole history of me trying to knit.
There's a whole entire like joke within the knitting crocheting community that like if somebody asks you a question you're counting, you like don't answer, and then if they ask you again you're like, I'm counting, and if they ask you again you're like 4, 5, like I'm just not like, don't speak to me until the counting is over.
Yeah, and I also tried crocheting, but it has the very same thing. I mean, I would just be like, wait, now it's this big, and it was supposed to be this big. I was supposed to be at 8, now I'm at 12. That doesn't work. So I realized quickly that was not the medium for me.
But don't you have to pick out like these sort of patterns? Like these are all obviously patterns, right? So like, in terms of pattern choosing, I guess that's a similarity.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to cut all the fabric and then sew it all together the way that you're going to with the pattern, and there is actually quite a bit of math involved, unless you wing it a lot like I do. So
I wing it too. Math is not my thing.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh, I like the way this looks, I'm just gonna keep doing it. There's that version too. So, everybody's got their own little version, but yes, reasons why I'm not a knitter.
Seem to be the same reasons why I'm not a quilter.
What fuels us to continue doing knitting and sewing?
I mean, the first thing that fuels me is legitimately still sanity. Like it's like I can be frustrated and put it all into the thing I'm making and carry it with me, so that like it's a transportable.
See, now
art.
That's the part I envy you about being the knitter and the crocheter, is I can't just pick it up and go. There is a lot of hand sewing with the applique and things, and I have done that, but I've never gotten it to the point where I like just have something in my bag, because I do envy that part of the knitting.
And I also think it just brings me joy. Like it's just fun, and it makes me happy, and I love the colors, and I love like challenging myself to try things I haven't tried. So I think that's what motivates me to keep doing it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I love taking this old beat up piece of furniture and turning it into something amazingly starkly different than where it started. And like I show some people some of the before and after pictures because some of them are truly like you can't even believe that it started that way.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I mean, all the textiles they're older pieces of furniture. They're in tatters and, you know, it's lived a whole life, and I love breathing that new life into it, and it's just becoming this reborn thing that brings happiness. So,
and it's such a cool way to, like, use quilts in a different way. Like, instead of just having them around your house, which is lovely,
right.
But, like, this is, like, a more consistently used type of way to use the quilt, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just different.
Yeah, I love it.
So, Lauren, thanks so much for hanging out with us and chatting today.
Thanks for having me.
And go ahead and show us what's on your Etsy shop right now.
Sure. So, I don't have them here, but I have some earrings and a garland of beanies available. And then I have these two hats, this beanie and this beanie with a pom-pom. And you can find my stuff at LaurLaurLoops on Etsy. So it's Laur for Laur. I'm on Instagram and Facebook also.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I can pick just one piece. I really, really do love the Venture On. I also really like this. And I really like the black and white one. And
well, let's get your picture with the black and white one.
Okay.
That was the perfect one to get a good picture.